Wise podcast listeners. This is Holly Long, your host, and today we are coming for May, Small Business Month, and nationally it is celebrated, particularly in the first few weeks of May. But unfortunately, we were on vacation, and so now this is our first week back, and we are kicking off our celebration of National Small Business Month. And I have some pretty cool guests today. Our first guest is Gabe Munoz from the Toolbox KC. And I'll let Gabe chime in a few minutes. He's going to explain to us what the Toolbox is. Anybody who's out there who is a small business owner, and you need some technical assistance and things of that nature, Gabe is your guy, especially if you're on the KCK side. Next, we would like to introduce my coworker, who has welcomed me with open arms since day one of my journey here at LISC, Mr. Serta, Daniel Serta. Daniel is, well, let's see. His official title, I think, is the manager of KC Cure Project, correct? But as LISC evolves and things of that nature, we all are doing multiple things. And so Daniel and I have spent a lot of time doing requests for proposals or grant applications. And so we spent plenty of nights up until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning writing these requests. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but hey, teamwork makes the dream work. So welcome you both to Community Wise Podcast. And yeah, let's kick this over to Gabe. Gabe,
Yes, thank you.
how you doing?
I'm doing good. It's a beautiful day, and already knocked out 3 meetings this morning with small business owners, so that's always a lot of fun. So brings a lot of energy for me. So I feed off of
Cool.
off the entrepreneurs. So
Well, let's talk about the toolbox. So, explain to us what the toolbox does, what you do specifically for the toolbox, and if I was a business owner, a small business owner in the Wyandotte County, how do I get in touch with you?
yeah, so we try to be really flexible. So the toolbox is a one-stop shop for small business services. So we can assist individuals with kind of anything they really run into. I think our really specialization is around permits and licensing when folks are just getting started, helping them with creating and developing their business plan, working with on the financial projections for their business idea, as well as trying to seek funding for the small business. So we weren't necessarily started with the intention of starting an organization. What happened was we started as a informal community group that was digging into the Wyandotte County community, specifically Central Minnesota Avenue, to better understand where were the obstacles small businesses are running into as they're trying to get their business started or as they're growing. And so we actually surveyed small business owners to get a better understanding as to what those obstacles were. And we really ended up finding 5 key factors that the entrepreneurs were running into. First was just the lack of awareness. Small businesses had no idea what resources exist in the community. Most of them aren't on the email list or they're not following the different entrepreneur support organizations on social media, so they're not getting the information. They're also really busy running their business that they're not usually behind a computer, being able to read up on everything and seeing what opportunities are legit, what they qualify, and whatnot. So there was a big lack of awareness. The other was the access. So they're really here in Wyandotte County. There was no physical location really for people to be able to go to, and even up until a couple of years ago, there wasn't even really any coffee shops where you could even just have these formal gatherings and just meet up for coffee. And so Wyandotte was really lacking on the resources that made it easy for people to go and get help. The third was that they felt that a lot of organizations that support entrepreneurs aren't have a cultural understanding of more diverse communities, and that they don't, and because of that, it's really tough for them sometimes to serve more diverse communities and communities of color. The other part was that there was a big lack of trust. So just a history of false promises of, whether that's politicians or other agencies stating that they support small businesses, small business backbone of the American economy. They felt that it's really these big corporations and companies that get all the tax incentives and breaks, and that they never receive anything, but they're the ones ending up paying a lot of the tax bill. So, and carrying that burden. And then the last piece was lack of language resources. So a lot of the resources that exist for small businesses only exist, or the services are only available in English predominantly. And so our idea was going into this is, well, how do we help address these issues? We know we can't answer all of them at one time, but what can we do to
Right.
help reduce those barriers? And so we started off by just doing some pop-up workshops in the community. We were hosting pop-up workshops, and then at those pop-ups, we then offered office hours on the following for the following weeks, so people could, they learn about a subject or topic, and then we can help them one-on-one be able to navigate whatever the topics, whether that was applying for a program maybe that we were announcing and highlighting, or if they're looking to what do you call it, sharpen up their business plan or their business idea. And so we started offering this. Then COVID hit, and we
Right.
had to kind of stop and pause and figure out what we're doing and what we're going to do. What we really started doing was just reaching out to the small businesses, and just being an ear for them to at times to vent on, because they weren't hearing back from funding that they were applying for, or a lot of times they actually didn't
Right.
even know what funding was available. And so we were making them aware of the different grant programs and loan programs, and then helping them gather. We received a small grant from KC SourceLink that allowed us to contract some accountants and CPAs to be able to help these small businesses with getting their books in order. A lot of them just didn't have their financials in place and in order,
Yeah.
and so they weren't able to apply for these grants, and they were getting tied up. So the accountants were able to work with them and help them put that all in order. And so from there, we just continue to see consistent demand for more and more help. As COVID's prolonged, we've seen more businesses actually get started now. That folks are seeing that they're not being paid what they want, so sometimes they're doing it out of economic mobility, and trying to move their families up economically. And so, but a lot of times folks have that passion and that skill, but they don't have the experience on running the back end. So maybe they've done, drywall or roofing or something, and they know how to do that. But when it comes to now all of a sudden putting a bid together, invoicing,
Right.
handling the taxes if they got employees, or in HR, in marketing, and so then that's where we come in and we help with consulting them, and as well as getting them plugged into other resources that already exist here in the metro.
Dope. So, okay, if I was in the dot, I came up with a small business. I come to see you, Gabe. Walk me through the intake process and what qualifies, or what businesses, I don't want to say would be best suited for your services, but like, could I be anything? Like, could I be a braider? Could I for hair braids, or can I own a trucking business? Like, what does that look like, and what does your clientele look like? And
Yeah.
talk to us about the diversity in it.
So the intake process is really simple. It's just I always set up just an informational session just for us to sit down and
Uh-huh.
meet. And I communicate with people. We have people who actually texting has been really popular lately. For folks will text and to want to get more information about what we do or how we can help. And so people can, if they're interested in getting help, they can text us, call us, email, or even through social media and stuff. So people will reach out. But usually we sit down and just have a conversation, get to know the individual first. What's their goal? What's their reason for wanting to start a business? What's their experience? And kind of and from those conversations, actually, it's where we kind of get to know a little bit more as to why the person, what their goal is. Because if we don't know what their goal is and where they want to be, it's hard to actually give them a plan of action. And so that's where we want to kind of sit in and just have those conversations. It's through those conversations where different things pop up all of a sudden, where you're like, oh, well, have you thought about this, or what about this? And we start talking about different other resources. But we work with all types of businesses. I would say individuals who are in like tech driven type businesses,
Mm-hmm.
we don't work we work with, and I have worked with some, but those are there's other resources I think that are better suited. Those that are maybe
Mm-hmm.
into manufacturing and some of the larger type businesses, not as much. But we work a lot more with service industry type businesses, so janitorial, cleaning, construction, roofing, retail, and restaurants have been really popular. We have quite a few folks who have food ideas, food businesses that they want to
Mm-hmm.
get started and whatnot, and helping them to navigate those processes. So yeah, so really all types of businesses. So
Okay. So give us the Reader's Digest version of how, and I should have led with this question. How did the toolbox come to be the toolbox?
well, as I mentioned, we were doing the pop-ups, and then we were doing the outreach around PPP and the idle loans. And so as those
Gotcha.
programs started to wrap up, and there were no longer well, there was no more funding available, so they
Hmm.
ceased. Businesses still needed help, and people that we had helped apply for funding were still looking for help and guidance. And so we had a cross sector group, a coalition of folks that were helping with the this initial outreach and marketing and stuff. And so when we asked if any organization would be willing to kind of take this in as in within a program, they really felt that
Hmm.
everybody that was at the table wanted this to kind of be open to the community and not one separate organization own it. And so the idea came
Right.
to create the toolbox to be something that's going to be sustainable, that's going to have a physical location in Wyandotte County, for people to be able to come through and to. And so there's a group of 9 individuals who all came together to go ahead and start the toolbox. And so we've actually, on the 12th, last Thursday, we celebrated 1 full year actually now that we've been in operation.
That's
So
it? Just a year?
yeah. So we informally, I mean, 2 years but prior to that, where
Right.
we were doing pop-ups, and we were kind of, yeah, just trying to see
Right.
what
Right.
we were trying to do.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I know we're gonna wait to hear Lillian's. I don't want to say testimony, but her story and how she became a participant in the toolbox and how you all helped her. And so we're waiting on her to come in. It's a very interesting story, so listeners, stay tuned. Otherwise, you know, uh, I don't want you to miss this really really good story of of the opportunities. So, but we're gonna kick it to Daniel now on the list side because of course list also partners with the toolbox and kind of talk to us, our listeners, about what we do at LISC and to help small businesses. Um, you could attest to the many a nights that you and I've stayed up writing these proposals. Explain to us what do you do and how does LISC help in this regard?
Sure. Well, as you noted before, I have sort of dual roles. I'm, an economic development program officer, but my primary responsibility is managing an initiative called KC Cure, which stands for Kansas
Yes.
City Catalytic Urban Revitalization, which is a commercial corridor revitalization initiative focusing primarily on the Troost and Prospect corridors on the east side of Kansas City, Missouri. KC Cure dates back almost a decade now. It was started in 2014 as an outgrowth of efforts and partnership that collaboration that LISC has with the Urban Neighborhood Initiative. And the idea was try to focus some of the development activity within the UNI area, which is fairly broad. It's about 10 square miles on the east side of Kansas City that runs from Truman
Right.
Road all the way down to nearly the UMKC campus, basically between Truce and Prospect. But to try to really hyper focus that in a few key commercial areas to create opportunities for entrepreneurs to focus on providing and helping to build out from a real estate development perspective, a commercial real estate development perspective, some of the essential services that the neighborhoods need as
Mhm.
housing revitalization begins to take place on the east side. But really fundamentally to sort of light the spark, that's where the word catalytic comes from, to identify
Mhm.
those areas that really had some market momentum and potential and that needed a very inclusive strategy. One of the things I'm always very open with telling people about is that there's a lot of development that goes on in Kansas City, and a lot of it happens with direct and indirect public assistance in the form of tax incentives, for example. But very little of that is done in a way that's intentional and thoughtful and deliberate with regard to the benefit it's going to have on residents of neighborhoods, on entrepreneurs within those communities, and particularly entrepreneurs of color. So Casey Cure was really set out as a framework for thinking about neighborhood level commercial development and revitalization on that scale. The one part of Casey Cure that wasn't terribly well defined when I came on board 4 years ago was the question of how we were going to assist entrepreneurs. There was a lot of focus, I would say, on the real estate and the physical revitalization side, but not as much on discrete strategies to help entrepreneurs. And one of the things that we did is actually a period back when I've known Gabe for a while in different contexts, but we kind of reconnected back in 2019 because we launched a small business opportunity survey to try to probe from the business perspective what are the needs and the challenges out there. And our findings align very strongly with everything that Gabe was talking about earlier. Everything from the lack of knowledge about informational resources out there to the need for basic 101 help with getting financial statements together, with getting books together, with understanding management and marketing and client recruitment, all of those essential things that go into any business, whether, as you said, Holly, you're a braider or you're, running a trucking business or you're mowing lawns or, doing whatever the case might be. Another thing that's really important, though, that we did, Gabe didn't really directly touch on this, but I want to make sure to highlight it. We basically mapped what I would call the sort of the landscape of entrepreneurialism within that urban neighborhood initiative boundary. Like I said, it's about 10 square miles. And when you talk to people in the civic community and the larger business community, even some of the political leadership in Kansas City and in the region, you often hear a sense that, well, we know that those areas are, disinvested. But that's read to mean that there are no entrepreneurs there, that there's no business activity there, that entrepreneurs haven't been there, haven't been down in the trenches doing really important work, and some of them for a really long period of time. We identified over 600 operating businesses in that area. We were able to parse out through work by our consultant, Eastside Collaborative, that nearly a third of those were either women or minority-led businesses. We were able to establish that something like 40% of those minority-owned businesses had been in existence for over 5 years, which many people were very surprised to hear. And about 10% of them actually had been in business for over a decade. We actually had even some that we identified that had been in business for over 20 years. And they were of lots of different scales. There was probably close to two-thirds of them were what we would call micro enterprises, which are businesses that typically have fewer than 3 employees, less and that yield less than about $150,000 in annual revenues. A lot of them were sole proprietorships, so they were individual entrepreneurs doing work on their own, running their own business. But it's still incredibly essential to their own livelihoods, right? I mean, it's not a dramatic opportunity for employment, for example, but it is an opportunity for growth. And again, the findings basically aligned with what Gabe was talking about. I think something else that was very important there that we heard was that there was both a lack of information as well as a very checkered experience that a lot of these businesses had had with trying to access capital. And capital that these businesses needed to do everything from provide operating cushions in terms of cyclical cash flow for a business that is more seasonal in nature, or something like a small contractor where it's kind of feast or famine. Either you've got so much work you can't respond to all of the bid requests you're getting, and you're so busy, and you're trying to bring on people to help work with you, to you'll go 2 or 3 months without having any leads or having any projects in front of you. And businesses need base level financing, lines of credit, access to credit to be able to weather the slow times and keep their business in operation and sound and running, and particularly to keep staff on. So those were the two things we heard very consistently: was we need a lot of help with kind of baseline operations, and we also need a lot of help with accessing capital. So that was back in 2019. 2020, as Gabe said, the pandemic hit. And here at LISC, generally, we moved into response mode with participating in the Regional Response Fund that tried to support both
Right.
nonprofits and entrepreneurs. And then specifically, we were able, through a partnership with the city of Kansas City, Missouri, able to obtain $500,000 in dedicated revenues from the Central City sales tax to invest in businesses within that CCED boundary, which is a little bit different than the UNI boundary, but basically it covers the east side. And we were able to grant, grants up to $10,000 to businesses, depending on how large they were, how many employees they had, that were affected and impacted adversely by COVID. So that really got the wheels running for us, so to speak.
Right.
We had to put a lot of processes in place to be able to do that. We are a national organization with a very strong local footprint. We've been here, as you know, Holly, for 40 years, 41 years this
Yes.
year. And
Great.
that being said, most of our activity, I would say, most of our history has been focused on housing and a lot of it on the
Yes.
real estate development side. So, I'll be very honest in saying over the last 2 or 3 years, we really had to flex and put some new processes in place and build some resources to do direct work in supporting entrepreneurs. And a key component of that is this business development organization network that we're working on building in. The Toolbox has
Yeah.
become the newest partner in that with some initiatives we're going to be pressing forward on. And our role in
Yeah.
that respect is to help bring additional resources to Gabe and the work that he's doing, and also to provide help to the Toolbox and our other partners, Prospect Business Association, the Border House KC, and Hispanic Economic Development Corporation, in actually
Mhm.
achieving their outcomes, both in terms of doing
Yeah.
the work and in terms of reporting and being able to monitor and demonstrate the impact that they're having for the small business
Mhm.
clients that they serve.
Wow. Impact. I'm gonna give you a moment to kind of share with us a little bit about Liliana, and if she comes in before we end, great. If not, we understand she was in transit. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about the African dress shop and her story and what she does and how the toolbox has helped elevate her business.
Yeah. So, so Lillian is originally from the Congo, from the Congo, Democratic
Congo,
Republic of
yeah,
Congo.
the
Uh,
Republic of Congo.
yep.
Yes.
And so she was a refugee and moved here to the Kansas City area around 2017, late 2017. And so she had 6 kids when they immigrated here to Kansas City through Catholic Charities, and so she wanted to be able to. She started. She wanted to be able to what do you call it, increase her skills. And one of the things that she did back home was sew when they were in the refugee
Yeah.
camps. And so she used to sew products and sell those. And so she wanted to hone in her skills. And so when she met with some of the staff at Catholic Charities, they made her aware of a program called Rightfully Sewn. And so,
Yeah.
Rightfully Sewing just educates individuals on how to sew and provides sewing classes. And so, one of the first things Lillian did was she signed up to participate in that program and learned how to sew, and they were able to help her with through that program be able to get secure a job for her. And so as she started to sew, though, she really enjoyed what she had been doing back home, and so she wanted to start her own business, but she wasn't sure how and how to get the funding to buy the equipment. And so through the help of Catholic Charities, they actually helped her with applying for AltCap, was doing a pitch competition, and they assisted her with being able to apply and put her pitch together. They helped her with putting a sorry, she's actually walking up right now. So I'm going to have to pause real quick because I got to open the door for her.
Pause. Let's
Okay.
pause. All good. All good. And Daniel, you can chime in about how LISC or what LISC's role with the toolbox other than providing technical assistance. Are we doing anything else with the toolbox? Do we have any ideas of expanding some of the services? Hi, Lillian. Okay.
Well, let me answer that really quickly just to say, people, this often bears a little explanation. LISC is what we refer to as a financial intermediary. We are a community development finance
Excellent.
institution. but we don't directly service small business clients. In other words, well,
Absolutely.
there is a context in which we will. I'll talk about that in a second. But primarily, what we rely on is partners in the field to actually do the
Right.
face-to-face work of helping and providing direct assistance to those. Now, the exception
The
to
Gabe
that
of the
for
world.
yeah, exactly. The exception to that for slightly larger businesses is we do small business lending, but typically that's at a much larger threshold and for larger established businesses. But as you can imagine, doing work with small entrepreneurs, it's very painstaking and it's very time consuming. And so we think our efforts are best directed towards supporting entities like the Toolbox and helping them do the work that they do and do it successfully on an ongoing basis.
Yes. All right. Gabe, you want to introduce us to our lovely guest who just showed up? Hey.
So yeah, I'd love to introduce you to Lillian Lamani. So she is the founder and owner of African Designs by Lillian and Amizi. She has 7 children now that also help
Yes.
that help her with running her business as well. So it's a
Oh, wow.
family-run business, and so they create all types of custom-made clothing and apparel, fashion designs,
Yeah.
and also sell
Yeah.
different products that she's imported. So from there, yeah, Lillian, I'll let you introduce
It
yourself.
is a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, my name.
And I've read your story on the Kansas City Star, and oh my gosh,
Oh, yeah.
welcome. We are so glad that you are here with us and talk to us about the help that the Toolbox has created, or just even the platform the Toolbox has created for your business. Anything you want to share about that?
Should I start? All right. So, my name is Lydian Bemani. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm the owner of African Design by Lydian and Amisi. Yeah, my business right now it's up and down. So, it's really not good enough for me, but I'm just trying my best to make it work. Yeah.
And so with the toolbox, I'm sure Gabe and the toolbox staff have helped in the regards of like providing some assistance in and how to manage the ups and downs of business development and your strategy, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when Lillian was
Yeah.
first getting started, I actually, before she was already doing well when she first got started. I had just read about her, so I
Right.
reached out to her to be able to connect and
Mhm.
just to learn her story, to meet and to learn more about her, and really just stayed in contact from there. And so as I came across opportunities, then as I knew her business, I was able to go out and try to find specific programs that would be of benefit for her, that she's been able to participate
Right.
in. And so, an example of one program is called the IDA, the Individual Development Accounts,
Hmm.
which Lillian was able to participate in. And so, that's a match savings account. For every dollar she saves, it gets matched with $2. And so, she was able to save through that savings program to be able to purchase equipment for her, yeah, for her business. But when COVID happened, there was definitely a lot going on. And so
Of
we were able
course.
to, we helped apply for a couple of different grants. Unfortunately, we weren't able to win those grants from
Hmm.
during COVID, but we were able to help her apply for some other funding through the SBA,
Hmm.
and gathering the
Yeah.
paperwork. And if you've seen some of the questions and the applications you got to complete, they're very intimidating. And they're all
Yeah.
online and everything's all digital, and so you got to be able to have the ability to be able to navigate that. And so we've been able to help serve as a role through that. But even as Lillian continues her business, still has not recouped fully from COVID. And so
Yeah.
we've been working on figuring out how do we help change and adapt that,
Hmm.
analyzing where her expenses are at and how we help reduce that. Even inventory for her has been tough for her to be able to get her supplies that
I
she
can
gets, the
imagine.
materials that she gets all the way from Africa, and so
Yeah.
navigating all of that. So there's just a lot of different things. Yeah.
Wow. Well, is there anything else you all want to share with our audience before we depart? I know we're well past the 20-minute mark.
No.
Well, we understand and we appreciate you coming to our podcast. Gabe, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. Um, any takeaways from the toolbox? And where's the toolbox going after this year? Like, where do you see the sustainability of it? Like, do you see you guys working long term in the Wyandotte County area to help more and more businesses? What's the future?
Yeah, no, we want to continue to grow. We're definitely looking here, by the end of the year, bringing on two staff members. So that's really good. So
Okay.
we'll be able to bring more folks to be able to help more individuals. We've actually have now become an official partner of Network Kansas as well. So we've actually started to receive calls from across the state from other individuals who don't speak English that are looking for assistance on just navigating their new startups and stuff. So we've been starting to even expand to doing online consultations for individuals who have that ability. But our focus still is Wyandotte County. We still have so much work that needs to be done
To do.
here and a whole ecosystem that needs to be developed here. So we're continuing to build up on that. We have a loan fund called the Empower Loan Fund. And so we're able to do micro loans of up to $15,000 at 4% interest for 4 years. And so we're looking to develop and help build up that loan program, which has been really important, especially for those new businesses that are just getting started. So individuals who, for example, got a gentleman who wants to get into guttering, and that's his skill set, and that's what he does and specializes in. But in order to purchase the equipment, the main equipment he needs is $15,000. But then you have to pay for all your material up front. You got to pay for labor, and you won't get paid for 30 to 60 days. So he needs access to funding just to
Yikes.
get that business started. And so creating more access to capital is definitely a big thing that we want to focus on. We're located right here, as I said, on 1303 Central Avenue. So if anybody who wants to, if they're looking for assistance, or if we have folks out there that have a specialty or have an expertise in the skill set that they're willing to donate or to share with a small business owner, we would appreciate that as well too. So, but we definitely appreciate the support
Absolutely.
of LISC, supporting the toolbox as well as the clients of the toolbox.
Awesome. Mr. Serta, any concluding comments on behalf of LISC and
Yeah,
all that you do?
just a quick one. Gabe alluded to it. There's research out there that shows that entrepreneurs of color in particular lack something that a lot of uh, other entrepreneurs have, which is access to capital, namely in the form of either personal savings, family wealth, or
Hmm.
credit history that allows them to draw a line of credit to get a business
Right.
established. Most entrepreneurs of color don't have access to those baseline
Yeah.
tools. And that's one of the areas where we are pursuing resources to help our partners like the Toolbox obtain those startup capital sources. They're very, very difficult to come by. They're very scarce. In the broader scheme of things, though, we're really not talking about that insurmountable a goal for individual businesses. Typically, that's between $5,000 and $7,000 to get going out the gate. As Gabe mentioned,
Yeah.
sometimes if it's a more capital-intensive business, that hurdle is a little higher. But we're working on getting those resources in place so that we can help entrepreneurs that come to the Toolbox get their other services also be better positioned to actually get started and get up and running and building wealth and bringing that back into their communities.
Yes, it's all about the ecosystem of how all of this is interconnected, from community development to economic development to generational wealth to thriving communities. So we thank you all for joining us today on this podcast. We hope that we see more of the toolbox and we see more of you, Gabe. Lillian, it was nice to meet you. And Mr. Serta, it's always a pleasure working with you. And I appreciate you. So
Yeah, same
thank you,
here.
everybody.